If you have ever ran a program that had nothing but the basic barbell lifts, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because in today's video, I'm going to be talking about those basic barbell lifts. So I do think that when it comes to your training, compound movements should make up the majority of your training, and the barbell lifts definitely fit that role. Now, with that being said, there are modifications that I believe should be made, or even can be made, that make them even better. So, for example, the first thing we need to kind of talk about is the fact that there are more than just 3 compound lifts. The fact that compound lifts doesn't mean barbell lifts, and the fact that if you know, and you should practice that your training should mostly be compound movements, and you get rid of barbells, that you are going to suffer as a result, in my opinion. There are things that you can do to make the squat, bench, and deadlift better exercises for you, but taking them out completely and labeling them as bad might be a bit of a jumping the gun kind of thing. So here's some things. First, if you're going to do a barbell squat, I recommend doing a high bar squat or a front squat, maybe even SSB. You are doing a squatting movement pattern, and you're using a variation that you can load very heavily. And then you compound this with your leg extensions, your leg presses. You're going to have some impressive ass quads. The leg press is a compound movement as well. So you doing all these things. Is it a compound movement? I'm like thinking about that real quick. But anyway, what I'm trying to say is that you should not just think that, oh, X lifts suck, and try to equivocate like, oh, it's better, like isolations are always going to be better in one situation or not going to be as good in another situation. What you should be thinking about is, in what context would it be most appropriate to put in this exercise? And I do not think that there is any context where, if your goal is size, and especially if your goal is strength, where not using compounds is a good idea. Most of your training should come from compound movements. Reason being, the compound movements do build up a wide base of muscle. They hit a lot of muscle, so they build them up very well, but they don't build them exceptionally well. They build them up to a point, and they build some muscles more than others, which is why isolation exercises and more focused work is 100% necessary. But the reason why, if you are busy, if you're stressed, if you're under recovered, if you have something going on, you don't have as much time, if you have X amount of other variables that are conflicting with your training schedule, why you would just go into the gym and hit your compounds and not your isolations is because the compound lifts are able to hit a wide variety of different muscles, and they allow you to maintain any muscle you gain. When it comes to you not having enough time, you having to cut down on the amount of work you can do in a session for whatever reason, right? Because it's much better to go into the gym, hit a little bit of the work than just do nothing at all. It's always better to go in and do at least a little bit, right? You're not going to be building any new muscle when it comes to smaller movements. If you do barbell rows or if you do pull-ups, these smaller muscle groups of your back probably won't be growing all that much, but you can be sure as hell that they're not going to get any smaller. So compound movements are a great way of maintaining your muscle mass, which is why if you are in a time crunch, if you are stressed, if you are whatever, compound movements are 100% necessary. Now, when it comes to squat, bench, deadlift, because these are the ones that are most commonly going to be kind of dealt with in whatever kind of way. I already talked about the squat, so let's go into the bench. The barbell bench press. I love the barbell bench press. I just think it's great. Is it the best exercise for hypertrophy? Well, if you are the kind of person who has to qualify best by whatever promise of expedience they deliver you, I don't think lifting is gonna reward you all that much, because lifting is a very slow game. It's a very slow process that you have to commit yourself to over a long period of time. So the bench press being a great movement for hypertrophy is going to be based on a couple things. How consistent can you be with it? And how honest can you be with it as well? Are you using compensatory strength strategies such as an excessive arch? Are you basically leg driving your way to a higher number on the bench press? Or are you actually modifying your form so that way you're getting the most stimulation from the pec? Just building your pec from the movement that you're trying to use, right? So are those things that you're considering? And then, of course, dumbbell benching, hammer strength machines are great for building the pecs. So these are all ways that you can incorporate compound movements, because the shoulders are still going to be involved, the triceps are still going to be involved, and everything like that, but you're focusing on building the pecs. Then, of course, the deadlift. I think that most of your deadlift work should come from Romanian deadlifts and stiff leg deadlifts because they're kind of the same thing. The only difference I see between a Romanian deadlift and a stiff leg deadlift is the fact that the stiff leg still goes back down to the floor. That's my kind of definition of it. I'm not sure if that's like the actual standard, but that's just kind of how I interpret it. When it comes to Romanian deads, it's still off the floor, but I would prefer it to be mid shin, like going to at least mid shin and still off the floor. Now, is that the most scientific way of going about things? Is that the most like accurate way of breaking it down? Probably not. So take that with a grain of salt. But when it comes to the deadlift, that should be your main variations. Of course, you can also do the trap bar and maybe even some other machines that can emulate that movement pattern, but you just want to make sure you do have a hinge, right? So another thing that I want to point out is the fact that there are other exercises that anyone can benefit from that are compound movements, and trying to just stick exclusively to isolations is only going to keep you small. You should do your rows, you should do your overhead presses, and there's a wide variety of different overhead presses that you can do. Your strict military press, your seated non-back supported overhead press, your chest supported row, your T-bar row, your chest supported T-bar row, your seated cable row. I'm a huge fan of that hammer strength chest supported row. I love that machine. So you should do your rows. You should do compound movements that hit your back. You shouldn't just rely on these super hyper specific mind muscle connection, time under tension, squeeze biomechanically favorable or optimal exercises. You should have some hard hitting exercises, and those hard hitting exercises are your compounds. So should you be overly attached to one specific style, one specific movement, one specific exercise that fits a movement pattern? Hell no, I would never advocate that. But should they be absent from your training? Absolutely not. You should have compound movements as the base of your program. So what are some other compounds that you should have involved? So I've already mentioned the squat, bench, deadlift, rows, and overhead press. They were once referred to as the big five, right? But we're trying to build the best body possible and then not be a big five sporting good, right? So what you want to do with those movements is that you want to be a bit more loose with their terminology. When I say squat, bench, deadlift, I don't mean the competition style, the competitionally optimal way of squatting, benching, and deadlifting. No, I mean, do you have a squat variation? Do you have a bench variation? Do you have a deadlift variation? Do you have something that can hit your muscles in this way that you can overload over time? Cool. Now do that the same thing with rows. Do you have a row variation that you like that you can use? An overhead press variation that you like that you can use? And then, of course, vertical pulls, pull-ups, lat pull-downs, neutral grip pull-ups, chin-ups, and a wide variety of different grips on lat pull-downs, straight arm lat pull-downs. Are those in your program? Pullovers, dips, bicep curls. I consider bicep curls a compound lift, and part of that is mainly just so I can elevate them to a higher status so I can give them a bit more priority, but that's just me. But I just wanted to make this video to say, if you're going to the gym and you're doing nothing but the strict barbell versions of a lift, you're probably not going to get the best results for hypertrophy. But in the same way, if you're going to the gym and you are only trying to do isolations, you're also not going to be getting the best hypertrophy and strength results especially. So compound movements, regardless of your goal, should make up the bulk of your training, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the compound movements are competition style, are going to be like the way that you just lift the most amount of weight. No, it's you stimulating the muscle to the best degree that you possibly can and adding weight to it over time. So compounds are great at doing that because you can progress on them very well, and then you add in all your isolations to help build the muscles that are going to be missed by the compounds. But you can rest assured that the compounds will maintain that strength or maintain that size. So if you do like work on your rear delts, you can rest assured that your rear delts, if you add in all those other exercises and all that other work to help build them up, that when you do your rows, it's going to be enough to maintain it. The amount of work necessary to maintain a muscle is significantly lower than the amount it takes to build it. So when you do build it back up, whatever it is, that muscle or whatever, like for example, the rear delts, you rowing is enough to maintain it, but it's not enough to grow it past a certain point. So if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Just wanted to make this video because it's very easy and it's very enticing to get caught up in ways that might expedite our training. But really, in my opinion, there's not many ways that we can kind of go about it. Compound movements are always going to be a staple. Compound movements should not be limited to whatever someone decides and gatekeeps what it should be, right? So, but at the same time, we can't just swing all the way to the other pendulum and get rid of them and think to ourselves that leg extensions are enough to maximally build the quads. No, squats, a squat variation, leg press variation, maybe even a hack squat with an addition of leg extensions, programmed optimally, or whatever word you want to use in that like blank. Optimal is like maybe not even the word I would want to use there, but programmed intelligently, that's what's going to maximize your size and your strength. So I'm done rambling. Thank you so much for watching. My name is karelstandstrength.com. If you would like to support the channel, you can support me on Patreon, or you can buy merch off of my website. So my dog is getting restless and I have to get ready for work. Have a good day.